Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Maria Russo. I'm the children's books editor here at the New York Times, and we are celebrating Women's History Month with Sarah Green. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah is the illustrator of a new biography of one of the great pioneering women artists of the 20th century, Dorothea Lange. It's called Dorothea Lange, the photographer who found the faces of the Depression, written by the great Carol Boston Weatherford, and illustrated by Sarah Green. So congratulations, Sarah, on this wonderful book that really brings to life this important woman who I learned a lot about in your book. I thought I knew everything. Everyone knows her most famous photograph, Migrant Mother.
Right.
And there's so much more to her life and to what it took for her to become a professional photographer as a woman in the early 20th century.
Definitely.
So, so maybe let's start by looking a little bit at your process and how you created the art for this book.
Sure. So I like to work digitally on children's books just because I feel like, well, I'll get to that, but there's a lot of like freedom that comes with digital. So I brought some printouts of like my sketches.
So you start with a pen and paper.
I start with a pen and paper, which I didn't keep because it's so when I'm doing like the first, it's like I'm just doing layout, so it's literally like it's like 4 lines and it's totally indistinguishable.
It's just to get your idea. So show us. Let's just see how you do those really quick.
So these are my sketches. I kind of like to lay out like it's really about layout for me and composition when I'm doing sketching, and then when I'm working in final, it's really about like kind of building that up.
Right, and let's look at how some of those pages turned out.
Sure.
So that's the sketch, and then you go into your digital tool. What's your digital
I work
setup?
with Photoshop, and I have a tablet, and I use gouache brushes on Photoshop. So
they're actually gouache brushes that are kind of virtual gouache brushes.
Yeah, so it's an interesting process.
Yeah, a lot of people. This has been like a real change in children's books, right? So you created that picture that looks like a painting without ever picking up an actual brush.
Yeah, what I really like about digital was that I kind of came to it when I was in college, and I was really struggling with perfectionism. I would get really intimidated by the white page, and I was overwhelmed, and I would feel really bogged down by that. And when I moved to digital, there's just undo.
Oh, right. You don't
and
have to see your mistakes for too long.
It completely freed me up from that self-imposed pressure that I was really dealing with.
Oh, that's a great point.
And I learned so much about color and composition through digital because I was just making so many so quickly. You know, you can make 5 compositions in like 2 seconds.
Right.
So you learn a lot about.
But it looks like you still do have to take out the pen to
Oh
start,
yeah, absolutely.
You know?
It's kind of that give and take in that back and forth. And I was kind of talking about earlier with my agent how in between book projects I always do a painting. And I do a lot of like studies with paint.
Oh, that's great! In fact, you brought one of your paintings.
I brought like a really
so
like
just to kind of keep your creative juices flowing.
Yeah, exactly, and to kind of do something that's like really different and like there's just no pressure involved. And I like to use like Bristol paper and like acrylic paint because it like keeps me from getting precious about just like studying.
And this is always good for children, aspiring children, who want to paint and draw to here. Like just keep going, just keep trying, make mistakes, and move on.
Don't get precious with it.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about Dorothea Lange and how you came to draw her. Do you want to do some sketches of young? How about show us how you did young Dorothea?
Okay.
The book starts in Dorothea Lange's childhood, which was a difficult childhood.
Yeah, it was. She had polio as a child, which really taught her a lot about empathy. And for the sketching, I'll just use this one.
Okay, so those are just markers.
These are Zig Clean Color brush pens, and if you get them wet, they start to bleed. But I really like the movement of like this like paint tip thing. So okay.
So you did lots of sketches of Dorothea as a child. Did you look at photographs of her childhood?
Not so much of her childhood. I looked at like photos of the era. And because for her, I designed like what I wanted her to look like first. And then I kind of like, okay, what did she look like as a child in my head, as opposed to like what she maybe actually looked like, because I was thinking of her as not a character, but as like I wanted her to be really distinguishable throughout the book. So I wanted to like get to know her before I started. So I kind of came up with this like really simple design of like short brown hair and like really simple colors. She's pretty much only wearing like blue and red and white and black. So I wanted it to be kind of like, because I wanted to also play with like Americana,
right?
Through
she
her.
Was a child of the early 20th century.
Right.
She was born in the late 19th century, right? She was born in 1895. So you're talking about a childhood, right? As you're saying, from a long ago era that you have to bring to the children of today,
right? So I wanted to kind of focus on like who she was first, and then kind of unage her.
Right, and so the sketch that you're doing now is of a page where we see Dorothea in wearing her leg braces that she had to wear for polio, which was a common sight.
Really common, then. Yeah. And it was really not like exciting to do polio, but my grandmother had polio, and I know it was like a really important part of my mom's childhood, so it was important to, kind of like.
So you looked at lots of photos? I
looked at children with polio, and like kind of like she's walking very stiffly, and that was like they walked very like it was difficult. Right. So.
Well, we have people watching from all over the world to hear about this great American woman artist. We have Binky Webster watching from England. Isabel Carrera saying, hi, I'm watching from Lisbon, Portugal.
Cool.
If you're just joining us, we're celebrating Women's History Month with Sarah Green, who has just published her first picture book as an illustrator. It is a biography of Dorothea Lange, the great photographer of the Great Depression. It's a book for children, but it follows Dorothea Lange through her whole life, and grown-ups can learn a lot from this book about. It's written by Carol Boston Weatherford, who is kind of an expert in biographies for children that really teach children and speak to children, but also are authoritative. So what we really see in this book is a life that is exemplary. So we're two women here in 2017, having our own challenges in our careers, and you look back at a woman like Dorothea Lange, and you just think, wow, we have it easy thanks to.
Well, they definitely they broke a lot of barriers. She really broke a lot of barriers, and in a very simple and subversive way too.
Right, her just by photographing people that weren't usually photographed, just that decision to show the down and out.
Right, exactly.
As they call them. Well, let's talk a little bit about just your career as an illustrator, since it's Women's History Month, and you're an artist who is succeeding now, thanks to women like Dorothea Lange. But do you still feel that there's struggles and pressures as a woman in the illustration world? I know there's a lot of talk in the children's books community right now about, there's still kind of seems like it's harder to be a woman. It's harder to get the attention.
I think it's sort of like women really look out for each other right now, which is really helpful. But I think that it's definitely hard, and it's part of the struggles I think with it is sort of when you're in art school currently, art schools right now are really.
I've heard there's 75%.
It's about 75%. Yeah, it's
amazing and very different than it used to be.
Definitely. And
but if you look at books that are on the shelves now, that's not the case, right?
Right. It's not necessarily reflected. It was, even though there are a lot of kids. A lot of women going to art school right now, I think it's still a lot easier for men to be successful. And it, like I said, I think that the benefit of right now is that women are really looking out for each other.
And in fact, you were part of a group of women illustrators that kind of raised awareness a couple of years ago about certain pressures that you face as a woman illustrator.
Yeah,
and you were kind of dubbed the Humorless Mutts Club.
Yeah, that was
because someone called one of your members a humorless mutt for complaining about
this,
male bias in illustration.
It was like this this article about sexism in tech, and they'd chosen a male illustrator to illustrate this problem, and women were kind of like, the illustration had some issues, and the main response from women was like, this is a really great example of a role that we should have been given.
Right. And why was that not assigned to a woman illustrator?
And when we brought that up, we were met with a lot of anger. And that was jarring for me, because
you were probably the youngest
member
of that group, that spoke out.
Yeah, I would say that happened like right after college graduation for me, I would say, almost.
So that was a rude awakening into what was ahead of you.
Yeah, right? It was. And
but the attention was paid, and I think even now things are changing.
Right.
If you're just joining us, we are here with Sarah Green, who is drawing as we speak her rendition of the famous photograph "Migrant Mother" by Dorothea Lange. And could you tell us, we have a question from Robin Taylor. Could you please write down the art supplies you are using or that you recommend? Thank you for doing this.
Okay. Let me use the pen because it'll be clearer.
So this is the brush pen.
Number one, this brush pen is called Zig Clean Color.
Oh, you're writing it. Great.
Yeah.
That's always helpful. Okay.
And then I like to use a combination of Winsor Newton gouache, which is really great for, write that down, which is really great for just like pure color, like they do pigments really well. And then I kind of like this like weirdo acrylic gouache, which I used a lot in college and haven't used as much recently, but it's what I use in a lot of my like paintings. And it's really thick and plasticky, and I kind of like that.
Oh, great. Well, so you're going to be able to add some color.
I'm going to do some color. I was just
Mother.
sketching it out first.
Yeah, maybe while you do that, I could read a little bit.
Sure.
I was thinking that might work so you can focus.
Sure.
Maybe I will go to the part about how this famous photograph, Migrant Mother, was created.
Sure.
By Dorothea Lange. So she was driving around the country, as she often did, photographing people and looking for subjects. And then one day, through driving rain, she spotted a sign for a migrant camp. Although ending a month-long assignment and yearning for home, Dorothea drove into the wet and soggy camp and parked. Rains had destroyed the pea crop, and with it, hopes for work. Laborers were breaking camp and leaving, but Dorothea approached a family that was staying put. For days, they had eaten only wild birds and frozen vegetables from the fields and had sold their car's tires to buy food. Dust storms had driven them out of Oklahoma to the west to work as farm laborers. Excuse me. Now the family was stranded and starving. Dorothea shot a half dozen or so pictures of the mother and her children. Oh, sorry, hold on.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So, yeah, Dorothy, let me read this. Pick up. Rains had destroyed the pea crop, and with it, hopes for work. Laborers were breaking camp and leaving, but Dorothea approached a family that was staying put. For days, they had eaten only wild birds and frozen vegetables from the fields and had sold their cars' tires to buy food. Dust storms had driven them out of Oklahoma to the west to work as farm laborers.
Okay, I can take it from here.
Cool.
Now the family was stranded and starving. Dorothea shot a half dozen or so pictures of the mother and her children. The last, a close-up of the woman's deeply lined face. She looks much older than her 32 years. And this is the famous migrant mother photo, which Sarah's painting for us now. So tell us a little bit about how you came to decide how to present this famous photo in painting.
Well, when I got to this part of the book, I wanted it to be I think it's like the closest step we get to Dorothea and to anybody. I wanted it to be like a real like zoom in, because this is like the climax sort of the book. And I wanted to have it be a little bit more realistic too in my way. So I looked at a lot of references while I was sketching it, and then when I was painting, I just completely looked away, because I think that if you are looking too much at references, you get a little too caught up in like, oh, what should it look like? It's looking perfect, and it's important to like break away from that.
And yet I think you really captured the likeness.
Thank you. I enjoy doing portraits. I think it's very fun.
So, and I guess the challenge is always to do a portrait, but that looks like the person, but that also expresses your own style.
Right, and it's definitely a challenge. But I did a lot of like life studies and figure drawing and still lives when I was in school and before. So it's kind of like my background in some ways, and I really
is people. And Robin Taylor is saying, I love the freestyle of your drawing. So you really, like, it's such a challenge to capture that likeness the way you did, but it's still, your lines still look really free.
Thank you.
That's great. So, okay, so now, you're just getting her hair color. And one thing I learned from this book that I hadn't known is that the woman who was the subject of Migrant Mother was actually a full-blooded Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of those things that, we can't leave all of the biography work to the grown-up books. The kids' books sometimes teach us things
mm-hmm.
that we didn't know. Florence Owens Thompson was her name. Janice Lasco is saying, would love to see you do portraits of women veterans.
Ooh, that sounds
would
cool.
Be an interesting. Do you have another project that you're working on?
I do.
Now?
I don't know how much I can talk about them, but they're of a similar genre. One being more specifically about portraits, and another being another woman from history.
Oh, great.
So it is something that I really enjoy doing, and I think I feel really honored to be able to give attention to these sometimes forgotten women. I think that we don't always give them, they don't always get all the attention that they deserve.
Right, or in the case of Dorothea Lange, people maybe know that one.
The one photo, right.
Photo, but don't really know everything that you showed in this book about her life and her struggles.
And one thing that came out really recently was her collection of photos of the Japanese internment camps, which the government had actually seized because they were portrayed to be too severe of the Japanese camps.
Wow. And
Ansel Adams was the only ones that they showed, because his sort of backfired, because he was looking to show like everyday life in the Japanese camps, but it came off much more sympathetic.
Wow. So what did hers look like?
Hers were, in her way, she was very cognizant of empathy. Like I think the whole book and her origin with polio and being an outcast really kind of taught her a lot about seeing people for who they are and not being afraid of being different. And her photos are very raw, and she, her subjects look back at her in that very raw way.
Right, it's true. But yet, as you say, there's this incredible empathy.
Mm-hmm.
They're all somehow beautiful.
She captured it in an amazing way.
It's true. We have two nice comments from Marlene Murphy. Kids' books are a great way to get to the heart of a historical era,
mm-hmm.
which is so true, because of the visual, because the illustration. I wish grown-up books had more of it.
Right.
But she's also asking, speaking of the illustration, is that a sponge applicator brush?
Sponge
applicator.
applicator.
I don't know. What kind of brush are you using?
These ones? I don't think they're sponge applicator. They're just random brushes I got at the art supply store. I'm not too precious about material, because, like I said, I've had issues with perfectionism, and I think like getting too attached to your
brushes,
and your paints and your paper is a surefire way, if you're not careful, and if you're like me, when you have this predisposition towards perfectionism, it can be really
that is
bad.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if you're just joining us, I'm here with Sarah Green, who is recreating one of the portraits she did in her biography of Dorothea Lange of Migrant Mother, the famous iconic photo of the mother and two children during the Great Depression. And if you have questions for Sarah, put them in the comments and we can try to see if she can answer them. We are talking about Women's History Month and the struggle of women like Dorothea Lange. And what are some of the other women artists from earlier that inspire you and that you look to?
When I was growing up, I really loved Jan Brett. She was.
Oh yeah.
She did these like very Swedish illustrations.
Is she Swedish?
I don't know if she herself was born in. I don't know if she was born in Scandinavia, but her work is about Scandinavian folktales. She does a lot of.
Right.
Yeah, she had this book about a mitten that like all these animals got stuck in, and I was really drawn to that because she was a master of just like detail, and it's kind of interesting because I feel like I haven't been working as like detail oriented lately, but like I was really obsessed with her books when I was a child. And
yeah, now that is a surprise. I don't see any Jan Brett in her style, but that's how inspiration works, right? There's something about what she was doing.
I think her work was really informative for me in terms of storytelling. And this isn't a book that I wrote, but like I love things that are packed with information.
Well, that's you're lucky to be working with Carol Boston Weatherford.
Yeah,
she knows how to do that for children.
Yeah.
We have a great question from Deirdre Liscano. The Depression was such a dark time, and her photos reflect that. Was it a challenge to capture that feel with such vivid color, or did you purposely bring color to her story?
The answer is both to that question. Yes, it was a huge challenge, and I was very intimidated at the beginning. But I think that as I approached it in terms of like, what can I bring to it that I am comfortable with, and how can I challenge myself at the same time? And the medium that I settled in was texture and shadow. I looked at a lot of old westerns because I was like, what was that media of that era? And it was like High Noon and that kind of thing. So I wanted it to be that.
Colors, and it's the light of the American West.
The light and the American West,
it's a different light than we have here on the East Coast.
It is, yeah. I'm also from California, and I kind of like closed my eyes and thought of home because she did a lot of photographs of just the California West. It was an interesting challenge to do gray and black and white, which I wasn't as familiar with, but I was really excited by the challenge of it.
And really, obviously these photos are in black and white, right? So so you were able to kind of take them in your direction when you added color.
True. I looked at a lot of colored photographs from colored black and watercolored black and white photographs too, to get my tone.
Oh, that's interesting.
I thought it was kind of like a tonal nod. I got to keep it subdued.
And the other interesting challenge for this book is you had to draw a lot of old cameras.
I did.
And old cars, old machinery basically, that are kind of shades of black. And you made the cameras look really friendly and nice. Can we show this big camera that you did?
Yeah. It's kind of in the bleed, but you can kind of, was it?
Yeah. But I love how you made the cameras. Like, how did you just look at a lot of old?
I did look at a lot. It was the same as actually doing portraits, where you look, and then you look away. And then I think that kind of frees you up from, again, getting stuck in the wanting to get it perfect. And so I kind of like wanted to keep it like kind of blocky, and like I wanted them to have their own personality. And I thought they should be approachable. So I'm glad that was picked up on because they were. They were her tool, and that was how she saw people, and I think she really used that balance of approachability, but also like everyone involved in the photograph, including herself, understood how serious it was. So it had to be that balance of honesty and approachability.
Right. We have a comment from Cody Ziegler.
Oh my God, hi Cody.
Childhood, saying Sarah rocks. She's definitely a role model. Have you been able to go to schools yet and talk to children?
I haven't.
So that's going to be coming up for you.
That's next for me. I've been so busy with some of the work I've been doing that I haven't really had a whole lot of time, but I'm hoping to do that very soon.
So do you have other models of children's books that are being done now that you're looking to as
my reference point?
Inspiration and reference points, illustrators you like?
Yeah. Let me think about that for a second. I think that, I love Carson Ellis.
Oh, yeah,
she's
Carson Ellis
so
is fantastic.
amazing. She really understands world building in a way that I just really appreciate and love. John Klassen, I think, is John Klassen.
Speaking of shadow,
yeah,
he uses
shadow,
so little color, in fact, hardly any.
I
and
think
yet creates these entire magical worlds.
I know, and I'm really drawn to that balance of crazy detail and really pared back simplicity, and I'm trying to find my way in the middle there. So my favorite illustrators are always on one end of the spectrum. So
right, and they're really those two. Even though they're friends and they in fact toured together for their last books, they're pretty much two ends of the spectrum.
Totally.
Carson Ellis gives you tons of detail, and
totally
Klassen pulls it back.
Right.
Well, those are good models
yeah.
to have. Have you thought about writing the books too?
Yeah, I have a couple of ideas that are percolating, that's sort of where I'd like to go next after I kind of wrap up with what I'm currently working on back in California.
To try doing the words too?
Yeah, writing is really, I am an overthinker, so I'm also an overwriter. And I find what's really interesting about children's books is sort of how do you get to the bare bones in a really simple, quick way.
It's never quick.
It's so hard. The best children's books are one page
right,
on a Word document.
One page can sometimes take 19, 20 drafts.
And so I'm really drawn to I've written really expository books, and I'd like to try something that's really pared down and simple next as a challenge, and kind of where I think children's books are. They're most successful in some ways is when
they're really simple.
So simple. But this is also a great example of
this is a children's book that will work in a classroom for older children too. Right? This is something that you can give to a 4th grader and a 5th grader. And you kind of need a little bit more information and a little bit more happening when you're going for that age group, and that's something that I think schools and hopefully parents are coming around to, that children still need illustration.
Right, totally.
Even when they're in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, 6th grade.
And I think that, the older kids get to them, when I was probably 8, I was just obsessed with learning everything that I could possibly learn. And I think kids are, when kids are younger, they're more interested in building their own worlds through empty space, left through the text. And that's really interesting, but also when you get to a little bit older age group, I think it's really nice to have so many facts.
Right. Well, they do start to crave information. They really want to learn about the world. And it's nice if we can give them things that are books instead of screens.
It's true.
For them to learn about the world.
Yeah.
Through.
And kids are always going to be tactile too, which is cool.
Yeah. No, it's true. Oh, so now, so we're here with Sarah Green, who is recreating for us in gouache paint the scene of that's okay of Dorothea Lange taking her famous photograph "Migrant Mother" during the Great Depression. So, what else did you learn about Dorothea Lange and her life and how she worked and her general approach? Because I know you did a ton of research for this book.
I did. I really focused on her backstory, and I think that when I learned her childhood illness and how she was bullied and she really felt like an outcast, that really made me connect to her in a way that I hadn't. She felt much more real at that moment. And that was
sort of realized that this great artist actually had polio.
Yeah, she had polio, and she'd had a really and she occupied this really lonely space as a child, but she didn't let that become lonely for her. And I found that to be really, really powerful, and that's really what I focused on was, again, the power of empathy.
that came out in her work.
Yeah, exactly. And she definitely had a lot of hardship in her adult life too. She got divorced. She had children.
Right. She had a very early example of the struggle that a lot of women still have. How can you have this career, especially a career that means you're going to be away from home and still raise children?
Exactly. And she got a divorce when really it was like not normal, or it wasn't common.
Right.
And I thought that it was
she had to face a lot of judgment and opposition.
But she was just so brave about it. And I was also really inspired by that, where she was just really comfortable with
her choices. But then she had a very happy second marriage.
She did.
Right?
She met
a fellow artist.
I show that. Yep, he was. And he kind of showed her like the beauty of the wild, of wildflowers and nature and stuff like that.
Because he was
there's Mr. Man, economics professor Paul Taylor, and he would kind of like go with him into the field and interview subjects, and I think that kind of helped her break some barriers through how to photograph people as well, which was really cool.
Oh, interesting. Wow. We have another words of praise from Lauren Allegritz.
Hey, Lauren.
Your cheering squad. She's saying, so beautiful, so proud.
That's my friend.
Yes. Well,
Lauren.
What you've done in this book is something really special. It's very modern, and it's very engaging for children to look at. But you've also really captured this little piece of history, this really important piece of women's history.
Yay.
So, yay. There she is. Okay, and here we're finishing up the camera. So one of the things that Sarah, I think we have time. Do we have time just to finish
the camera?
Get the camera in, because one of the challenges of a book like this is you have to do a lot of not very photogenic equipment.
Yeah,
right?
it was
Dorothea Lange. You can't really draw her without drawing a lot of cameras.
Right, and they're very like
cameras.
bulky and blocky, It, like I said, I kind of treated them like a character, and I wanted them to be kind of weird and wonky, and also like fun and approachable, but also like you know what it is, and they're serious, and it's a really weird balance.
The final thing I just wanted to mention that I really love how you did is the fashion, how you captured the way she dressed. You put her in these very wide-legged pants that seem very of the moment. Now,
but we're also
was that what she really wore?
There was a combination of I wanted her to be modern and wear like cute outfits, but also that's like she was wearing these like big old pants, and she was wearing a lot of like workwear. She wore a lot of like
blue work shirts.
Blue work shirts. I mean, it was like kind of the era of like original Levi's, and I wanted her to.
She rocked them.
She rocked them, and I wanted her to be wearing something that was like, showed that she was like not precious. She was like getting dirty with her. She's like getting on the ground and photographing people, and I wanted her to like have that approachability to them through like she wears like similar outfits to like everyone's kind of like dressed simply because it was a really simple time.
And then we have a question that speaks a little bit to this from Marlene Murphy. Did she become famous in her lifetime? She did after Migrant Mother get some renown. So
yeah, I think that she definitely she wasn't like a Van Gogh situation, but she definitely I think became more prolific after her death.
Or more
well known, more celebrated.
Her
death. But I think that she definitely did experience her success in.
She knew that she was doing something.
She knew because this photograph is what got the government to really send help and have people send help because she got the publicity for it. So it was she got to
people who were basically starving.
Right, she got to see the power of her work, which I think is really important.
Well, that is a nice note to end on.
Yeah.
And you made this fantastic, completely impromptu rendition of Dorothea Lange shooting Migrant Mother, the famous photograph from the Great Depression. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming and helping us appreciate this great woman, pioneer for Women's History Month.
Thank you for having me.
The book, again, is Dorothea Lange, the photographer who found the faces of the Depression, and it's just been published in time for Women's History Month.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sarah. I hope you'll come back when we see some of your other books.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so